the dark connection between high sugar intake and cancer. Now, I've avoided talking about this subject because I know cancer is such a sensitive subject, but I've decided that, you know what? If we can be preventative, why would I keep my mouth shut? And at a certain point, the truth is what the truth is. And, one of the things I think often about, because, cancer is one of those things, like we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of how, obviously they have the cure for cancer. They're just not using it because it's such a profitable business, because that's a side note we've already covered that. If you're on the winning team by now, that's like infant level truth information. You know what I mean? We're in the adult category over here. So that's not going to be of news to you. But I kind of, I saw somewhere about, the link between sugar and cancer, and it sent me down a bit of a rabbit hole. I'm not going to lie to you. And I want to be clarified that, to be very, very clear, and I've even written notes because I know that people are going to be like, I'm saying that high sugar intake, there's a link between high sugar intake and it creating conditions that make cancer more likely to develop or progress. So before I get into this, I'm just going to go ahead and debunk the people who are going to go, who are you to talk about this? Are you an expert? Well, first of all, I am indeed a scientist, So and to be honest with you, no offense to a lot of people, but I kind of value my opinion more than a lot of others because I studied chemistry, which is looking at things at an actually molecular level, not just a topic that you're taught in some institution by God knows who, in textbooks written by God knows who, but like you yourself getting to understand the atoms, the molecules, how they interact with one another. So I value my opinion a lot more than a lot of other so-called scientists, even who have maybe a PhD, which again, PhDs, if I had done my project that I did and I'd studied it for 4 years and written a full thesis rather than just a research paper, I could also be a PhD. Like, it's not, no offense to shatter anybody's dreams, it's not that impressive, right? So I do value my opinion more. And also, here's the other thing. I think there's a conflict of interest with the FDA and also with a lot of, allegedly, and also with a lot of scientists because, and this is something I don't think people understand, that science is a business. It's like what we did when we were looking at the particle physicist, Sabine Hossenfelder, who's a theoretical particle physicist, right? And she was basically saying that a lot of this work they're doing, and this is in the building blocks of the universe, a lot of the work that they're doing lacks empirical evidence. So what's empirical evidence? Evidence, it's the literal thing, the reason why we trust in things, like why people would trust in something like science versus, say, faith belief systems. You have evidence. They're saying they're lacking empirical evidence, but yet they're still making these post, like they're still publishing these papers as if they're official scientific research. When she spoke up about it, I did a whole series. It's part of my Fourth Dimension series. When she spoke up about it, the letter that the reason why the community was against her for pointing this out is for the simple fact that, we know that there's issues, but people need to have jobs because this is people's lives. So if we talk about this, many people are going to lose their jobs. So yes, you're right. There's lacking in, you know what I'm saying? So this is what I'm saying, that this science cannot be trusted. There's always conflicts of interest because things have to be funded. And again, with whoever's funding something also informs what the desired outcomes would be. So for example, I've told you guys that if I were to do a PhD, my dream PhD would be to work on airplane engines sponsored by Rolls-Royce. So there are PhDs I can do where Rolls-Royce pays for my PhD and I will be paid. And obviously they're funding the university to do this research to improve, like the casing on airplane engines. That's how it works. With science and scientific research, somebody has to pay and there has to be an exchange of funds. So whoever's paying, that's the person who has the power to potentially affect the interest of what the outcome of that study is. And of course, there's going to come times where it's favorable for certain things, i.e., if they find a nice, cheap cure for cancer, that's not going to be helpful in a business that thrives off of people getting chemo, people booking appointments, people paying health insurance, especially like in the United States. So everything I'm about to say, I'm saying all of this just to say, take that all into account, because I think people are way too trusting in the science system. It's one of the reasons I never went to work in pharmaceuticals and why I don't work in those fields, is because I know that at a certain point I'm going to have to sell my soul to science. You know what I mean? And I don't want to sell my soul to science. It's not worth it. It's not worth getting rich just to sell my soul to anything. Hence why I'm here in the predicaments that I'm in life. So anyway, back to what I was saying. So I know, and I've said this before, that I think we've intentionally been encouraged in the West to kind of develop sugar addictions. And I say that as an outsider to this because, as I've said to you guys, I'm not really somebody that's like really into the sugary stuff or even carbohydrates. Not because I'm trying to be healthy. I've just always not really engaged. And also mainly because of how it made me feel. I'm not a sweet tooth. I'm not somebody who has a dessert stomach. None of those things. I'm not somebody who has to like I'm not. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, looking at it from the outside and having spoken to so many people that really defend themselves, because again, it's funny how people really feel the need to defend themselves about this stuff. I'm like, why does it matter? Look, you have your tastes, I have my tastes. That's fine. We all have our own things, and that we can all go on in our lives, living the lives that we live the way we live them. You know what I mean? You know, I could probably reduce my salt intake, you know what I mean, for example, but that's my own thing over there. So like I said, it's not no judgment. The reason I'm bringing this up is because even though science and technology has been moving forward, and even though all of this, for some reason, we're developing more and more cancer, and cancer really destroys families. That's what makes me sad about it. Seeing how it destroys people and how people deteriorate and destroys families and friendships, and we lose people early, and you see kids dying from it. It's one of those things that always sits in the back of my head where I'm like, I really need to think more about how this is being fostered, because I feel like we are intentionally being fed in a way. We are intentionally being put in conditions to encourage cancer. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. So, for example, diets high in refined sugar can lead to obesity, insulin resistance, and chronic inflammation, and all increase the risk of developing cancer. So again, it's not so much that, because obviously the cancerous cells, they need glucose. So it's not that like sugar directly feeds it, but it's that it just helps the body to be in those conditions more so for that to happen. You know what I mean? It's similar to like, you know, when you're sick, a lot of the times the reason you're sick is because your immune system isn't as strong. It's a bit compromised. So then when something else comes along where your body could normally fight it off, you know, apparently statistically our body fights off one cancerous cell a day or something like that. Probably more now. And then I heard that statistic was a while back. You know, so in the same way that happens, because again, and this is the thing what I've been saying, I don't know why all of a sudden I've been talking so much about diet and pharmaceuticals recently. I think because for me, I'm getting to the point where it's been some years since I have had access to really good produce, really good quality produce, and I'm feeling it in my body. And so it's making me think a lot more about just like what I eat and like where I'm getting things from and how different I used to feel and like the kind of diet I'm on. I'm on a very different diet to the diet I used to be on. Now I'm kind of just like, you know, eating when I can. But whereas before I used to be, you know, really be able to take the time to buy good ingredients, go to the butchers, go to the fishmongers, buy my fresh fruits and vegetables, you know, and buy all these ingredients. And then also throughout the day, I was more easy for me to make my meals in a way that was beneficial for my health, which is not an option for me at the moment. So, I'm noticing the differences within myself. I'm also sicker. Like now I'm getting sicker more often. I used to never get sick throughout the whole year. Nowadays, I'm always got a little bit of something, a little bit of a throat thing, a little bit of a nose thing. I've always got a little bit of an ache and a bit of pain, a bit of bloating, a bit of this, a bit of a rash here or this there. And I've realized I do believe that it's all to do with what I'm ingesting, to be honest, for the most part. So that's what kind of led me down this rabbit hole, because I've realized like there's cancer and diabetes for me seem to be two things that are really causing issues for us as humans right now. I know a lot of people suffering with diabetes at the moment. Fortunately, I don't know anybody close to me who's suffering from cancer, although my grandmother did supposedly potentially have cancer, but she never told anyone. And then she kind of mentioned it to me after the fact, when I was with her once when we went on this trip to Spain to my auntie's place. And so, you know, we never really know. This is the reality of my family. You never know anything. This is why I just don't see the point in talking to any of them, because anything is anything and everything is everything and no one knows. And there's all so many secrets. And it's just like, you know what? Can't be bothered, mate. But, and again, those types of things are also important for people to know about from a scientific standpoint, because then if you're at risk of something, that might also increase the risks of those coming after you having those same exact things, which is again why I want to think about all this stuff and why it's also fascinating. So anyways, all to say, it doesn't surprise me that over time, like I said to you guys, even this concept of breakfast and breakfast being the most important meal of the day is a newer thing. It's something that started, I think it was like 70, I can't remember how many years ago, and it was one of these big, huge campaigns that they ran, especially in the United States, to try and sell these products. Again, people in the West trying to find the big businesses. In my opinion, these are all my opinions, this is all allegedly. In my opinion, to be able to profit off of the things that they can make. So obviously you can grow wheat in the United States. Like a lot of the foods from around the world, the healthy foods, they grow in those places because of the climate. You know what I mean? In the West, especially this country, unfortunately, sorry to the UK, the climate here is not good for a lot of things. So a lot of things that are created, I believe, were kind of to create business where there wasn't business, to be able to trade with the rest of the world. Whereas, places like in the Middle East and stuff, they've got like oil and gas over there. They ain't worried about nothing. You know what I mean? And again, is that surprising that, the kinds of diets people have over there, etc., etc.? I believe that the West, in a lot of ways, created a lot of products and a lot of this propaganda to get us invested in buying these products so they could get rich. So now so many people eat cereal in the morning, cereal which, even if it's high in fiber, high in wheat, high in whatever, it's still processed. This is my point. And a lot of them, again, carbohydrates, sugars, sugary this. It's like it's being done on purpose, because then where do you go? Then you go off to the hospital, right? The same place, the same company, the same association. I don't know why I'm coming for the FDA so much at the moment. I think it's because I'm sick of hearing people like, oh, this wasn't FDA approved, or this was FDA approved. It's like, and you even trust the FDA in the first place? Because again, why am I trusting? I don't know who they are. I don't know where they get their ideas. So I don't know who runs it. I don't know what their intentions are. At least if I go out in nature and I see I see God's creation, I know God and I know who he is and I know his character. So I trust what he made and I'm happy to have it. And he does all sorts of things out in nature to give us signs to what is poisonous, what's not poisonous, what's safe, what's not safe. You know what I mean? God has built so many of those instincts into us as humans anyway, right? So why am I now going to go to whatever, the supermarket and these, that, and the other, where whoever that I don't know is creating these products, but they do these things so that we get into them. And then again, it's about the addiction. I'm going to talk more about this addiction concept when to do with Islam and Mormonism. You might wonder where I'm going with that. You're going to have to stay tuned for that video. But they get us into these things where we can't help but the sweet treats and all of this because it benefits them. Think about it, because the people who are doing the worse off at the moment, in my humble opinion, are like, say, the farmers, especially like the meat farmers. They're being taken away from all the normal meats and everyone's going vegan. So we're switching out from what God created, from supporting people who've grown up maybe with their farm and their family for hundreds of years, that actually look after the animals or look after the plants themselves and have been growing them themselves and take pride in the quality of their products. We're switching those people out for the lab, for a fake vegan steak that's made using plant proteins in a lab. And you're just going to go and trust that they're just going to go and put everything healthy in there. We're switching out, eating things that God created from the plants. And you'll second guess going and like, say, for example, you see fruit out. Noticing a lot more fruits out, when I'm out and about. You'll second guess picking fruit off of a tree or out of a bush or whatever. But you'll happily go and just have these processed cereals that came out of a factory with God knows what, with all these things. And people was like, with ingredients I can't pronounce. That doesn't make any sense to me. And then we wonder why. So we wonder why we're getting sicker. Because this is my point. I'm like, if we're so knowledgeable and the science is so trustworthy, then how come we're not getting better? How come we're not living longer? How come we're not thriving more? Genuine question. And I'm not trying to take a hit at any particular diet, because again, even things say like veganism, like if you go to places like in the Caribbean, like the Rastas, I used to know a lady who was Rastafarian. I used to work with her for her. And she was one of my clients basically. And she, part of when we would work together, because obviously I was working for myself, so things were very casual. We would do things like, she would bring me a lot of her foods that she ate. But like when you go to see, like even where they live in places like Jamaica, the proper vegan Rastafarians, right? They eat from the nature. They're eating high quality things from the nature. They're not eating some weird fake made thing from a lab. They're eating from the ground, you know what I mean? From what God gave. That's part of why they do it, because they want to respect, what came from, God. I should talk about Rastafarians one day, because you guys know that their whole thing about Selassie is because he was the last king on the throne of David, and that's why they all really support him and all of that. That's why they all worship, Selassie, because he was. I just find that so fascinating how everything kind of goes back to God always with whatever you look at, and it's just crazy. Even like I'm saying now, it's like, why did we start having all these sugary stuff? Why do we have all these cake? And notice how they put so much emphasis on this food that's not good for us as well. Like it bothers me. It's been bothering me more now. Like when I'm walking out and about and I'm looking at ads and I'm like, why do I always know what's the latest thing on the McDonald's menu? Why do I always know what's the latest thing on the McDonald's menu? But if you ask me what fruit is in season, I couldn't tell you. That's worrying. That's worrying. You know what I'm saying? And shout out to some supermarkets at least try, like I think Aldi or Lidl does a special deal every season. Whatever's in season is always on a deal, and it's always at the front of the store. Like you can get it for cheaper than usual because it's current season. And those things are quite good, but it's like, I can, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of concerning. But that's because that's what they're pumping out, because that's what's making them money, because that's what they can have control over, because other things they can't. And I do think it's something that happens a lot more so in the West for that reason, because of we're not producing oil and gas or gold, or like where I come from in Zimbabwe, there's aluminium, there's gold, there's diamonds, there's copper, there's lithium, like, you know what I mean, in the ground. And people can mine and sell and whatever. You know what I mean? I believe even my own father worked in the copper mines, when he was a kid, you know what I mean? In Africa, you know what I mean? Can't see something like that in the West. So obviously part of it, this is what I'm saying, it's a business. It's a business. They have to find ways to generate income, especially in days like today, where that's why I find it funny when also in the West, we're always like, oh, the richest man of the world right now is Jeff Bezos. And I'm like, yeah, Jeff Bezos's bank account is like the pocket change to some of these Saudi princes with that oil and gas money over there. Vladimir Putin was out here just burning gas, right? When he got sanctioned, laughing in our faces like, oh, do you think I care? I've got so much that I have nowhere to put it, so we're just gonna have to burn it into the air, because where are we gonna store all this? And you peasants over there are the ones who need it. You peasants over there have got nothing to trade with us anyway. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, we look dumb in the West. Like, this is what I'm saying. When I see people being so prideful, especially people who are not even scientists, like, oh, we trust the science, I'm like, you don't realize how dumb you are. And this is why the devil laughs at us. And this is why I always have to give the devil his flowers for being so good at what he does, because he is truly so good at what he does. So when I discovered this thing about cancer and the link between the high sugar, the high refined sugar, increasing the conditions needed, because that's, again, like with a lot of science, a lot of what does or doesn't happen is a result of conditions created in order for something to happen or not to happen. So it's for the same reason why a lot of different industries are quite expensive, because maybe for a certain type of process to happen, you need so for example, producing ammonia. If you just have hydrogen and nitrogen together in an environment, they're not going to interact to form ammonia. You have to have a high pressure system that forces them to want to react together. You know what I mean? And that's creating the conditions for us to now form things like ammonia. All these different processes in the factories and whatever that produce a lot of the stuff that we have as humans. The conditions have to be created for certain for certain things to happen. It's the same thing in our bodies. That no, we're not saying that every one thing is going to directly cause this or directly cause that, but a lot of factors can come together to create conditions where a particular thing is highly likely to happen. You know what I'm saying? And so again, like I said, having a weakened immune system creates conditions that if there is a cancerous cell that pops into your body from whatever, could just be whatever, not to mention the factors is how the tech industry is working along with it, because I'm sure that we're going to discover 100 years from now, 200 years from now, that all these mobile devices that we're all scrolling on our phones and falling asleep with, and TVs and smartwatches that we're wearing that are tracking this and all this stuff. Aura rings is the new thing that people have, and all these AirPods and stuff with all these Bluetooth and all this. we're gonna realize that those things are also creating radiations and things that were, again, because isn't that how Steve Jobs died anyways, because of from being exposed to radiation? Am I not mistaken by thinking that? So I say all of this just to say that be warned that some of these things that we defend on the height of the hills, one thing that frustrates me about humans, right, is we'll be so upset when things go downhill. Like, we'll be so upset when we're sick. We'll be so upset when someone falls sick or someone's dying of whatever disease. But when we have the opportunities to like wake up and notice the evidence around us, we don't take it. So I'm like, so what's the point of being upset when you actually had the opportunity to kind of like go against this thing? You actually had the opportunity to like, oh, you know what? Let me be aware that X, Y, and Z might happen, you know, because of these conditions. You know what I mean? That's what frustrates me, because I'm like, what's the point of now being sad as if like you didn't have the opportunity to boost your health or make excuses, you know, or just go along with the claims. And this is the thing. This is what I've realized about humans, is you really can get away with saying something whilst doing the opposite thing, which is crazy. Like, you can, and because it's people pick and choose with that, you know what I'm saying? When it's some kind of association, again, why do you trust them? Half these people, do you know when it hit, one thing that hit me? One day I decided to watch Question Time, which is like it's like a show where they show the people in the parliament in this country, members of parliament, discussing things. And then they were showing what businesses all these people own. And when I saw that they were like the CEO of this and the CEO of that, I was like, that screams conflict of interest everywhere. That screams conflict of interest, that these guys are the ones whose bestie buddies, they're all friends together as well anyway, right? And you really think that you're getting the scientific research and that you're getting told the best possible answer? You really think? That's crazy. That's something that I think is crazy. And it's so crazy to me, especially as somebody who's a scientist, particularly in chemistry of all sciences, how confidently people say things that don't make absolutely any sense. And are like dying on the hill of, oh, you know, this is just propaganda, this is just whatever, this has been this person is just a conspiracy theorist. It's all a conspiracy until we're all dealing with the consequences. And then when we're dealing with the consequences, we're all like, oh, how did this happen? How did things get so bad? And it's like, yeah, well, when the data was in front of you, you didn't want to listen. You just went along with what the so-called trusted individuals, which again, who made them the trusted individuals? Listen, when I go out into the nature, I'm like, this is God's creation. You know what I mean? This is God's creation. He created these things, so I can work with that. When I'm out here in these, going and buying these products produced by this big company and that big company, I'm like, especially even like the conflicts of interest of why they do and don't do things, and the levels to which of technology people are doing. Like when I was studying at my degree, now this is not something I think is bad, but I just want you guys to think about that. This is really how intricate this level of processedness is. One of the girls on my course was working, she was doing half her time at uni and half her time working for Unilever, working on Magnums, the chocolate ice cream. And so her job was literally to like, she for work was literally shaving Magnums, right? Because they were trying to perfect, you know, the hard chocolate outer shell and working on the technology of that. That's what's crazy. Like, this is like, that was her literal job that she was doing, because every single detail of these products, people are paying for scientists. So she's going to work, she's studying her chemistry degree, and alongside she's working on the chocolate, the hard chocolate outer coating on the Magnum ice cream. That's what she's doing. You know what I'm saying? This is the degree to which of process. And obviously they take their findings, then they find, how can we make it more solid? How can we make sure it stays cold? What ingredients can we add? And a lot of this stuff that we're doing, this is again my problem with so many of these new foods popping up, and again, why everybody's all of a sudden got all these intolerances, and why all of a sudden everybody's got all of these everything, and we have all these new products, is that the solutions are then going to come from the lab as well. The solutions are then going to come from the lab, and it's like, who's creating it and with what intention? And again, if we're saying science is moving forward, then surely we should be getting better, not worse. But again, that's the law of entropy, which is also a scientific law that states the universe is always moving more to disorder, because as I've said to you guys, as a result of Adam and Eve and White, us choosing the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we are always going to walk ourselves to destruction as humans based on our own wisdom, because we shouldn't be trusting in our own wisdom. Hence why I don't trust in these things of this world, and I trust in God because I trust in his wisdom. Because in my wisdom, in my science, and my whatever, look, on our science, whatever, we're just dying. We're only getting closer to death. Cancer's ugly, and I'm sorry for anybody who's suffered from it or had anybody suffering from it. But let's try and be preventative and humble ourselves and address the elephant in the room, that maybe some of the decisions we're making are the reasons why so many of us are having so many issues. And maybe we need to start questioning some of the things we're being told and doing our own research for ourselves. Just saying. And on that note, if life's a game, it's played to win. God bless you all. God loves you. I love you. And I'll see you in my next one.